This is what anarchy looks like. We all know about the disgusting spectacle that occurred on Wednesday evening at UC Berkeley, where Eddie Brock was assaulted and his phone broken.
My name's Eddie Brock.
And how did you get the...
So, as we were talking earlier, I decided to be for Milo, for freedom of speech, for freedom of expression, to let Milo talk at this place. And these anti-fascists decided that that was too much, threw rocks at me, broke my phone, and decided to steal from me and break my face. Nothing but cowards. And this is what they want to represent. This is not America. America is freedom, America is liberty, and America is Donald Trump.
Where a young woman was attacked with a pole, and another woman was pepper sprayed after giving an interview. Where these terrorists attacked a car, and the car drove away with an animal on the hood. Or where a man was chased and beaten unconscious. The riots caused $100,000 worth of damage to the campus, the school said Thursday. Many have come out in condemnation of the terrorist attacks, as well as the assault on free speech. UC Berkeley sophomore Jonathan Gao, 19, rejects the idea that free speech took a hit. He said, and I quote, "The whole reason we're here is for free speech," Gao said. Milo's hate speech is not allowed here. When it's hate speech, our free speech is to shut him down. Okay, aside from the fact that he is still a child trying to wear big boy pants, his statements is so many levels of stupid that it boggles the mind. Okay, let me get this straight. You shut down free speech, but you didn't shut down free speech because it wasn't free speech, it was hate speech. And the violent attacks weren't violent attacks, they were free speech that was used to shut down hate speech. Okay, glad I got that straight. Don't worry, John, you're not the only person who thinks this way. This tweet basically states the same thing. Shutting down fascists and forcing them to cancel their public events is not a violation of free speech, it's an expression of free speech. Well, thank you, Maple Cocaine, for that. Then on Thursday night we had this. Police arrest 11 people at NYU protest over controversial right-wing speakers event. 11 people were arrested after tumultuous protests broke out ahead of a Thursday night event at New York University, featuring combative right-wing speaker Gavin McInnes. 8 men and 3 women were arrested on charges including criminal mischief, drug possession, disorderly conduct, and obstructing government administration, cops said. Let's go back in history for a moment. We're going to go back to the winter of 1964, where a group of students formed the free speech movement. This movement stemmed from the University of California, Berkeley, where students were banned from participating in any off-campus political activity, just like many universities at the time. Mario Savio became the spokesperson for the free speech movement in December of 1964. At this time, he and other members of the free speech movement motivated thousands of UCal college students to stand up for their freedom of speech that was being taken away by their university. This movement was successful in seeing the university lift the ban. So the same university that fought for freedom of speech only 50 plus years ago is now using violence to stop speech. Then there's this. In March 1969, a memo was forwarded to President Nixon that warned him that there was a high probability that they would see increased violence on college campuses that spring. What did Nixon do? He wrote one word across the page. The word was good. Why? The president knew something about civilization that social justice warriors don't seem to understand, but that has been confirmed through social science research. Violent demonstrations, riots, and property destruction did not threaten Nixon's government. On the contrary, violent riots made average citizens more sympathetic to the kind of law and order policies Nixon wished to enact. It's a shame that today's Antifa and Black Bloc rioters on college campuses have not absorbed this lesson. The violence and destruction we saw at Berkeley will help Trump and his supporters in the long run. Conservatism is not undermined by tactics that are in themselves fascist. This was confirmed by a study conducted by assistant professor of politics at Princeton, Omar Waslow. In his study, he found that violent protest movements in the 1960s and 70s provoked a backlash among conservative voters. Violent tactics drove voters into the arms of a more right-wing law and order candidate, according to Waslow. Nonviolent protests, however, did not correlate with any statistically observable backlash. Then there was the anti-Trump protest in Seattle on January 29th, where an activist associated with the Black Lives Matter movement took to the megaphone to voice her support for, among other things, killing people and killing the White House. While she said that, another protester could be heard screaming, "Burn it!" She also says, "White people, Give us your bleeping money, your bleeping house, your bleeping property. We need it bleeping all, as another protester responds, reparations. I would play the video, but honestly, if you've heard the F word once, you've heard it 1,000 times, and that's about how many times it's used in her moving, eloquent speech. Okay, let's go back to the schools, the hotbed of left-wing nut jobs. The Knights for Socialism group at the University of Central Florida held a workshop Sunday to teach left-wing students how to bash the fash with a leftist fight club open to everyone but Republicans, because the left really don't believe in diversity. In response to the record number of hate crimes against Latinos, immigrants, Muslims, women, the LGBT blah 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 community, Jews, blacks, and other minorities since the rise of Donald Trump and other alt-right neo-Nazis, Knights for Socialism has decided to host a series of self-defense clinics for anyone that wants to learn how to bash the fash, asserts the Facebook event page for Leftist Fight Club, the Rumbles at Lake Claire. This event is open to everyone and anyone except Republicans. The description explains that a local amateur boxer was on hand to teach basic hand-to-hand combat techniques at the self-defense clinic in order to help the socialist students better protect themselves from potential hate crimes performed by those sympathetic to Donald Trump and other alt-right neo-Nazis. Let's move on to Santa Clara University, where the student government rejects pro-capitalism club. It's against humanity to allow it. Santa Clara University's student government recently voted to deny a pro-capitalism campus club official recognition, citing the possibility that the group may invite conservative speakers and that allowing it would be a stand against humanity. Critics alleged that other Turning Point chapters in California have hosted controversial Breitbart journalist Milo Yiannopoulos and did not want his provocative presence at St. Clara. Others at the meeting apparently took issue with the fact that the leaders referenced American exceptionalism in their presentation. Turning Point's USA official platform states it exists to educate students about the importance of limited government, free markets, and capitalism through grassroots activism and peer-to-peer conversations. And we can't have that now, can we? Ditto for Drake University, where Turning Points USA was recently denied official recognition by the student government over concerns its messages are hateful and condescending. Do you see a pattern here? Then Columbia University socialists state we need more violence against Trump and his supporters to be effective. Get involved in the upcoming revolution. This is what a Columbia University student was telling passerbys on campus Monday as he handed out flyers for a Thursday event calling for a new socialist order in response to Donald Trump's presidency. The socialist flyers called for students to unite and fight Trump, to defend immigrants from deportation, safeguard abortion and reproductive rights, stand up against racist police violence, protect public education, preserve our unions, and save the planet. The meeting had a distinct anti-capitalist air. Participants not only discussed how to organize more effectively, but warned each other to avoid the pleasures of capitalism and denounced the racist electoral college that delivered the presidency to Trump. One unidentified student said the end goal was the transition to communism. The discussion wasn't a surprise given the socialist group's official website, which states, war, poverty, exploitation, and oppression are products of the capitalist system, a system in which a minority ruling class profits from the labor of the majority. The alternative is socialism, a society based on workers collectively owning and controlling the wealth their labor creates. Who are these radical, violent, left-wing socialist nut jobs that gather in black-clad groups leaving destruction, damage, and chaos in their wake, you might ask? Well, if they're anything like their German counterparts, then they are the quintessential unemployed boy men living in mama's basement. According to figures compiled by the Federal Office for the Protection of the Constitution, 92% of left-wing activists live with their parents, and 1 in 3 are unemployed. The study of Berlin protesters found. Guess we're not finding out anything we already didn't know. We're going to resist the pleasures of capitalism, unless it is pleasures given to us freely by the hard work of mommy and daddy earned in the capitalist system. See, they're perfectly hypocritical in all areas of their life. Something else we already knew. When dealing with the left, understand they are the opposite of what they claim to be. Churchill said that in the future, fascists will come disguised as anti-fascists. Just like these anti-fascists are actually fascists, they are guilty of what they say about their opposition, and their tactics will aid their enemy and create the exact opposite of what they hope to achieve. They have become what they hate. And of course, there was the deluge of celebrities that cheered the destruction and the beatings, from Sarah Silverman to BuzzFeed writer Hannah Jewell, to producer Judge Apatow, to Hussein Kasvani, to Kyle Griffin, who made an asinine comment about Trump being upset over protests of a Breitbart editor, to Arthur Chu, cheering that a woman got maced, to the mayor of Berkeley, who smeared Milo as a white nationalist. He also tweeted, "Using speech to silence marginalized communities and promote bigotry is unacceptable. Hate speech isn't welcome in our community." Then there's Brent Cameron, who justified using violence. This is how they shut down free speech. First, they charge outrageous fees that some student groups aren't able to pay. It's always at the last minute. They impose massive security fees on the student group that invited the speaker. Then the school issues some milquetoast announcement claiming they support free speech, but do not approve of the views of the speaker. They give a half-hearted attempt at standing up for free speech while at the same time condemning the speaker. They take no preemptive action to curb the violence that they know is coming. When the violence starts, they allow it to happen with zero consequences. Oh wait, there is consequences, but it's to the speaker and his or her supporters because the event is canceled. And of course, consequences to the people who are assaulted. Finally, they tweet out condemnations, not of the violent rioters, but of the speakers. This is what terrorism looks like. The left can take their chant, "This is what democracy looks like," or "This is what community looks like," and shove it. The definition of terrorism is the unlawful use of violence and intimidation, especially against civilians, in the pursuit of political aims. So the left are literally terrorists. That's not hyperbole, that's not rhetoric, that's an indisputable fact, and it needs to be addressed. They are not protesters. They're not even merely agitators or far-left extremists, although both may in part describe these people. They are terrorists. And their pejorative du jour is to call any opponents fascists. Now I want to address the real problem. The left have blurred the distinction between speech and ideas and action and violence. When they talk about safe spaces for students who hear opposing thoughts, they are suggesting that their safety is at risk through words or ideas. Charlie Nash reported that a BuzzFeed reporter was attacked for filming, and that one of the rioters stated that it had to be done because, quote, "filming puts people in danger." This is not only ridiculous, but it serves to legitimize their violence. When they say words hurt, they now mean literally. Benign actions such as filming are also dangerous. If a society cannot separate and distinguish between words and violent deeds, then it is doomed. What separates humans from animals is in part our ability to communicate through a written and spoken language, ideas and opinions. We can settle differences, discuss and debate topics in the marketplace of ideas. Well, that quickly goes to crap if ideas and language are equated with violence. Because in society, we meet violence with violence. If words are violence, then there's only one way to deal with them. All you have to do is read their signs to know what they want. Harm any, face the many. Fascists, pigs, bleed. Let that Nazi know their place, punch them in the bleeping face. Bash the fash. Make racists afraid again. As Stefan Molyneux says, we either have words or we have words with an S. We either act like human beings and use the power of language and debate, or we act like animals and start throwing rocks or locking horns to get our point across. The left don't believe in debating ideas. They don't believe in diversity of thought, in a range of opinions. They have labeled the opposition as Nazi, Hitler, fascists, and they mean to treat every one of us as such. As I've said before, you don't debate a Nazi, you overthrow a Nazi. They have cleverly dehumanized the opposition through language and riled up the troops. They come out in groups dressed in black, wearing face masks and bringing weapons. This is not spontaneous violence. This is pre-planned, organized thuggery. They don't want to work within the system to achieve their goals. They want to dismantle the system. They have decided that violence is the answer, and so far it is working. Because violence is all they have left. Milo's speech was shut down before he even had a chance to start. They win. The message is that if you disrupt, destroy, smash, punch, start a fire, use pepper spray, your enemies will turn tail and you've got your way. The difference, of course, is the game they are playing has deadly consequences in the real world. It is only a matter of time before someone loses a life. I was sworn in as a peace officer in the late 90s, and I worked in said capacity for the next 12 years. I always understood that when I was dealing with offenders, they could be violent and unpredictable. You had to be ready for anything. However, we are seeing a huge escalation in violence by a group of society that is, for the most part, law-abiding. It seems that every time I turn around, these anti-Trump crowds, or a segment of them, are creating chaos, injuring people, and destroying property. They want to see destruction. They delight in their own chaos. And this is a very frightening escalation. This is not what democracy looks like. Democracy looks like a peaceful assembly, a group of people expressing their opinions openly, peaceably, in public. This is what anarchy looks like. This is what a backward, undemocratic society that has lost the rule of law looks like. You see this behavior in a country where the people are powerless and the government has run roughshod over their rights. This is what happens when leaders make nonviolent revolution impossible. We aren't there. There are a group of leftist a-holes who want you to think we are there because they welcome anarchy. Don't believe them. This is what happens when one side loses the argument, when one side can't fight with words. So they do the only other thing they know how to do. This is what happens when you have newspapers and celebrities condoning the violence as the only option. If this continues, the only option for the country will be civil war. Fight for the republic. As I've said before, you had better cherish and protect the system of government that you have because you won't like what comes after democracy. Thank you for watching. This is Infidel L for NTDWI. If my message resonates with you, please consider subscribing and liking. Thank you so much and stay safe.